Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Intelligence Amplifiers. Today we have Tekeisha Zimmerman joining us. Hello, Tekeisha.
Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening.
Great to have you here. So you're pretty busy these days. You are a professor at Texas
Mhm,
A&M. You are
mhm,
leading learning and development at a firm.
mhm,
You've done some really interesting learning and development work. Um, but I wanted to start sort of like with the early days.
mm,
Why don't you
mhm.
tell us how you got into this? Like, what led you down this path?
Yes, yes. I think like a lot of professionals, it was an accident that was like the best accident that ever happened in my life. Um, Years ago, I worked for our local cable company that was eventually bought out by a bigger cable company, and I worked in the call center. I was a quality assurance rep. Mark, are you familiar at all with what quality assurance agents do in call center?
It doesn't sound that fun.
It is not. So, quality assurance agents are the ones who listen in on the phone calls, silently in the background for agents to give them feedback. And so I used to say that I was probably the most hated person in the entire building because the results of what I did actually would impact their bonuses, raises, all of that. And I had been in that role for about 6 months. And I kept hearing kind of the same mistakes over and over again. And so I went to my manager and I said, I'd love to figure out a way that we could, instead of just, sitting behind the scenes marking people off for stuff, maybe we can help them. And so she said, put together an idea. And so my idea was not revolutionary, very simple. I put together a proposal where I would come into every new hire class that we had in the call center and just do a 1 hour presentation where they would listen to calls and mark the calls. And that way they would kind of know a lot better coming out of training what was expected in quality assurance. And so I started doing that. And about 3 months in, what we started noticing was the new hires who were graduating were kind of outperforming our agents who were on the floor. So that was evidence that that program may have been working. And then just a few months after that, the training team had an opening for a facilitator. They invited me to interview. I did, and I never looked back. So I have
Uh,
been in learning and performance for about 20 years now, starting with being a new hire facilitator.
I love how you use the word performance, right? Like, and,
Hmm.
and so kind of reflecting back on this insight, I was thinking like carrot and a stick. So you went from like being a stick to like being a carrot. Like how
Yes.
how how to empower people, not how
Hmm.
to like punish them. Uh,
Yeah.
and and there was also this element of like just in time. It's very pointed. It's
Hmm.
like, hey, let's talk about what you did right and what you could improve on in your
Yes.
call. So it's not
Hmm.
this theoretical, let's talk about
Hmm.
how to do calls, but like how you can improve in this. and
Yes.
and how it sounds like your results were outperforming their results were outperforming their peers, and it sounds like
Hmm.
that you were outperforming what L&D in that in that organization was doing.
Yeah, they actually weren't training that. There was so much to learn in telecommunications and how to effectively do your job. So the quality was kind of woven in, but it wasn't intentional training. Meaning, they would say, "You need to get on the call. Here is how you answer the call. Make sure you're polite." But they were not doing a deeper dive. And so
Hmm.
that intentionality really helped us get results in the call center and help improve customer satisfaction scores, which is a key indicator in call centers. So it was good. And I did not even realize I was doing any of that. I just wanted to help people get better. And that's kind of been the thread throughout my entire career and what I love about L&D.
Yeah, I think that's an important, like it's a mindset that you brought in, right? Like it's about
Hmm.
helping people, that kind of really had a twist in how you approach it. And so what happened next?
Yes.
So you obviously you kind of made this
Hmm.
impact. The performance went up. Yeah, not only that, but like you
Hmm.
bottled it, so it wasn't like a one-time thing, but it was a
Yeah.
perpetually better for the organization. And then
Yes.
what was the next step?
Well, the next step is I was in the training department for a little over a year. And unfortunately, we had some layoffs. And so, I love the career that I have today, but I would be lying if I said it was like a linear path and everything was always great. So the training department, unfortunately, was let go. I was fortunate enough to find another role, but this time it was through a colleague of mine who I'd worked with. They had some openings, not just for trainers, but for training managers. And so I interviewed for that. Didn't get the role as a training manager, but I did get the role. They also, right around that same time, had one for a trainer. So I started training there. And I think, Marco, I was a frontline facilitator for probably 3 or 4 years, always really interested in what I did. But one day I wanted to know not just how to deliver training, but what made good learning content. And so that's what took me down the path to just investigating instructional design.
Hmm.
Um, and so I joined, it's ATD now. I think it used to be T&D, but I can't remember, but it's the
Yeah,
Association
yeah,
for Talent Development. They've changed. It was ASTD. Sorry
yeah, 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 yeah.
before. And I took a few years, I worked as an instructional designer. So I not only knew what it took to deliver the training, then I started to get a real understanding of like the science behind learning and how to put things together in such a way that engages people, meets learning objectives. So I was in that space for quite some time, I would say for another 2 or 3 years. So I had the beauty of being both a facilitator and an instructional designer. And I will say that I love facilitating a little bit more because you might be able to tell I'm more of an extroverted person. And so I kind of miss being out in front in the classroom because instructional design is really thoughtful, but you're doing a lot of your work. Even if you collaborate, you do a lot of your work alone. So I got to experience that part as well. So I did that for a few years before stepping into management and starting to lead my own learning department.
So you tried to get in as a manager, a learning
Yes.
manager, and but
Yes.
you ended up as a facilitator. But you had this like
Yes.
underlying curiosity, and that's what I heard here, like
Hmm.
curiosity of like, how do we do this better, right?
Yeah.
And that's what kind of drove you down this path of like instructional design and
Hmm.
like what kind of a design would enable people to learn better.
Hmm.
And it sounds like you also again had this like rapid feedback because you were also facilitating, so it's not like you were
Yes.
designing and handing off to other people, but you were designing it
Exactly.
and trying it yourself and getting
Yes.
like a quick feedback on like what's
Hmm.
working, what's not.
Hmm.
And but yeah, I'm kind of going back to that mindset of curiosity of like how do we
Yeah.
get this to the next level. uh
Yes. Yes. That is
cool.
what I found in my career.
Hmm.
Um, to this day, always curious as AI is coming in on on the forefront for a few years now, trying to figure out what that means for learning. So I would say to anyone who is thinking about this career, it is more than standing and delivering. It is way more than just making beautiful learning experiences. The curiosity is the underlying because for every training project you have, every facilitation, you get to learn something new. And when you're curious about that, it makes that learning better, which makes that experience better. You're experiencing that light bulb moment over and over again, and then you get to see it in the people that you support through facilitation or through designing the content. But the curiosity is the underlying factor, and it has been for me.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And
Mhm.
so you basically went from being a facilitator to being somebody who also creates content, instructional
Mhm.
designer,
Mhm.
and then you kind of hinted that that led you to leading your own learning team and
Yes.
getting into management. So
Yes.
what was that like?
Mhm.
What was that step? How did it come about?
Yeah. Um, just most of my in my early career to get into management, it did happen as a promotion internally.
Uh-huh.
So I had been working as an instructional designer and a facilitator for an organization, and then they had an opening for a learning manager, and I applied internally and was selected for the role, which was really good because I had an opportunity to build. I built the confidence with people, which shows that learning and development works. You don't always have to hire from the outside. I'm a living example of that. And I moved into leading an L&D team. So I had both trainers and instructional designers. And what made it really interesting for me, and I think really good for my team, is that I had done the work on both sides. So I could help. And I also got the opportunity daily to continue to grow my skills because I would learn from my facilitators when I would come in and kind of watch what they were doing in class and giving them feedback. And then I would learn from the designers as new tools were coming out and new ways of thinking around instructional design because I was looking at their work. So I was a training manager for a while. And then my big break in my L&D career actually came through a nonprofit here in Tampa, Florida. I was hired. This was the first time that I had reached outside and kind of didn't move up in the ranks, but I was hired as a director for L&D for a nonprofit here in Tampa.
So it's basically that ability for you to both have deep understanding of what it takes to facilitate and what it takes to design that
Mhm.
kind of had you now be able to coach and lead a team, right? Of those
Yes.
people, right? So it's really kind of
Yes.
like, as they say, you don't climb the mountain, you build a mountain underneath you, right?
I
And
love
so
that.
you're able to kind of build that team of people that you can now nurture and grow.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and you did that sort of like internally. And so, okay, so now you move laterally, I guess, to a different organization, and this
Mhm.
time a nonprofit, and
Mhm.
bigger title and presumably more responsibilities.
Mhm.
What did it mean to be a director, and how is it
Mhm.
different, like nonprofit versus for profit, if at all?
Yeah, what it meant to be a director was really different, and it's really what led me now down the educational path. Um, Stepping into that director role for the first couple of years was really different for me because I had to work through people as opposed to being the one who was doing the work.
Mm.
I did also find myself in more meetings where I had to use my brain differently, thinking through strategy and planning, also budgeting. So those were, again, in L&D, you always get to learn. So I was learning a different side. I would say I was learning the business side of learning and development in that role. And that is what led me to start thinking about my education and how I could continue to grow myself. And so my organization had opportunities for benefits around like going back to school. So I took those opportunities, and I'd already had my bachelor's and my master's. So I went for my PhD, and so I have my PhD in learning.
Got it. And you mentioned that that led you down the path of education, and so
Mhm.
I believe you're doing now, or you did your PhD, and it had to do with learning and development, right? Like how
Yes.
to actually get people. And this is super interesting because, like, I've interviewed a few L&D leaders,
Mhm.
and nobody went to school for L&D, right? Like they ended
Yes.
up somehow navigating into that space. And what I'm
Mhm.
hearing is that you're actually working on enabling that at the academic level, like
Yes.
as a formal sort of education. So tell us more about that. What does that look like?
Yeah, I get to, and I always say get to because it's a privilege. I get to work with the next generation of our L&D leaders. So the HR program that I'm part of at Texas A&M is an HR program, and it's really a different program than some that I've seen in schools because there's a clear HR management, which more aligns with the business school. And then there's HR development, which sits in the School of Education. And so in most of my classes, we are building curriculum. We are learning good instructional design. We are learning what it means to facilitate. and be a strong facilitator. We are learning learning transfer. And then when we do the business side of L&D, we talk more about like the talent development strategies, succession planning, how to help an organization move through OD. So I get to do that work, and I get to research and meet students, and also make connections to those students with the outside world. One example of that is I just secured a grant where I will be working with 5 students in the fall, and we'll be interviewing multiple industries. I think we have about 400 HR professionals who sit in talent acquisition who hire early career HR folks.
Mhm.
And we'll be interviewing them to create a skills matrix where we'll be getting information about what are they looking for in these graduates so that we can start to build those skills right at the educational level.
Got it. So I mean, it's a privilege, and it sounds
Mhm.
really awesome to be able to kind of geek out on all this, like how to
Yes.
best do L&D, but to do it in academia. Uh,
Yes.
yeah,
It is, I think we talked about geeking out before, and I get to do that, like, with
yeah,
students who love it too. Yes.
that is also awesome. And it's a school of education that mostly like the
Mhm.
development part is school of education, right?
Yes. It sits under the College of Education, which is really, really strong.
Yeah,
When I pursued my PhD, to your point, it was really hard to find one that was really just focused on learning and development. And so my PhD actually sat under the College of Information Technology because they didn't know where to sit us.
yeah,
So we kind of sat there. So it was a weird placement. But it was interesting because it was an applied program. And so that's what actually got me into teaching. Because as part of that program, everyone is required, all the PhD students are required to teach classes to graduate. And so I had to fulfill 2 years of teaching, so 4 semesters.
got it, got it.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember when you and I spoke before, you also mentioned the framework that you've developed, and I believe
Mhm.
you're doing a talk on that at
Yes.
ADT, and it has to do with hip hop.
Yes.
So tell us more about that.
So I grew up on hip hop. That is, it has always been my go-to. And when I had children, I have a son who just lived for music. And I had to really learn really the academic side of music to kind of get through to him when he was, considering like, why do I need to go to school? So just learning about hip hop artists and really studying them to be into his world, but also to speak his language. And I started to really explore like hip hop pedagogy because that was something I think around 2007, 2008 when my son was in school, hip hop pedagogy was gaining traction so that it could break through to a lot of students in a different way. And so I've always been really interested there. And I started to try a little of these things like in my facilitation. And over, I would say, 3 or 4 years, my framework, which is called the verse framework, came to life. I started studying what hip hop artists do to really engage an audience and make a message stick. And so there's some very, very specific ways that they use storytelling, very specific ways that they architect their session. So it's less about the content and more about them reading the crowd in the right way and knowing when to say what that will drive, the learning home. And
Mm,
so those characteristics are what I've been studying, and that is what the verse framework is for. So at ATD, I'll be doing a session that is on the storytelling portion of the framework and really how to architect a story. And not just because there's many amazing storytelling frameworks, but a lot of them do not specifically tell a facilitator when to use story based on what the crowd needs, and then how to craft that story based on what the crowd needs real time. And that's what my framework is doing.
it reminds me back to your call center days, right?
Yes.
It was less about the static content, right? The unlock
Hmm.
was like it's not about the static content; it's about just in time. Like let's talk about
Yes.
your phone call, or
Yes.
in that case. And now it's something similar.
Hmm.
It's less about like let's build this beautiful, PowerPoint-ish, SCORM
Mhm.
file, and it's more like, hey, look, how do we deliver the right message at the right
Mhm.
time for
Yeah.
you, and in this case, for an audience of people. That's what I'm hearing in
Yes.
this kind of check the verse framework.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you presented that a couple of times, right? At
Mhm.
ADT, I believe you are presenting it again. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
In May in LA.
It,
Yes.
awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's exciting.
Mm.
And you also have a book coming up, or at least planning
Yes.
so, and I remember
Mm.
there was something very interesting about the book and how you organized that or architected that. Uh,
Yeah. I'm working with ATD actually to bring the book to life. And this book will be part theory, part workbook. And what's really exciting about it is they are allowing me to release an AI agent with the book that is really
uh-huh.
designed for practice. Because I think you can hear it, Marco. I love learning and I love experimenting. And I know that the practice, the performance part is what drives it home. And so, in working to put together the book, I said, I don't want to create a book that people will just read once and put down. I wanted to really create a book that could live on. And so the book comes with an AI agent that is a coach that helps you continue to grow and get better and better with the verse framework and those techniques. And so ATD has told me I'm the first author who has come to them with an AI companion for my book. And so we are working together to get the book out and get it to folks as soon as possible.
That makes so much sense, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I always kind of had this thought in my head, when you want to master something, your
Hmm.
choice on one end of the spectrum is buy, let's call it a $20 book, right?
Hmm.
There's the other side of the spectrum is like you can get let's call it a $20,000 coach, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
there's very little in the middle. Book in
Hmm.
itself is not enough. You need some reps,
Right.
and that's where we
Yes.
usually kind of fail.
Hmm.
And coach is not accessible to masses. And what I'm
Yes.
hearing is like this combination, like of like here's the book. It's a great content, best
Hmm.
practices, but then
Hmm.
there's also the agent that kind of allows you to presumably get unstuck when you're stuck, do
Yes.
your reps, practice, get feedback, etc.
Hmm.
And yeah, that sounds really innovative.
Yeah, and it's designed to not teach you the book, right?
Hmm.
So it is really an application base. So when you
Hmm.
are in the classroom and you're like, oh no, I need to change my opening. What am I seeing? You can put in some characteristics. It'll work with you and it'll help you build like the best 60-second opener to really gain attention or a story in the moment when you need it. So you do need to understand the principles and the foundations. But once you do that, you can use that agent. And so the book stays alive forever that way.
Got it. In addition to writing a book and also working at the university, you're
Mm.
also advising, I believe, a firm or tech companies
Yes.
on L&D. How do you manage that? How do you split all your time and energy?
I was born with unlimited energy. I don't recommend it for everyone. But a firm is my main priority in terms of my role. I work with a firm to really lead the L&D department. It is an exciting time to be at a firm because fintech is growing. One of the things that I really, really was drawn to a firm, my personal values mean a lot to me in this world. And Affirm is one of the few financial institutions that's really not trying to take advantage, but trying to help. I use the product. And I know when I first started, I was like, how do we give money away and we don't charge late fees? How does that work? Because fees, in the industry are like how a lot of financial institutions make their money off of late fees or different kinds of fees. A firm doesn't charge those. So it's really about connecting clients and customers to the things that they need. And so I love it. And it's growing. We're about a little over 2,000 people right now. So it's a great time to be there and get to be on the forefront of building a firm's learning and development strategy.
Yeah, and I remember when we worked with a firm quite a bit, and I
Mhm.
was always blown away by everything that
Yeah.
goes into that. And there's a
Yeah.
combination of tech is really cool, but then there's
Mhm.
also the financial side, which also it creates its own set of like concerns and so
Yes.
forth. Like kind of being in the at the crossroads of those two things is interesting. Um,
Yes.
so I'm kind of I'm curious, you're on one hand, you're author with this
Mhm.
AI agentic book, I guess. Uh,
Yes.
you're doing some cutting edge L&D research,
Mhm.
PhD at Texas A&M. You're,
Mhm.
L&D at a firm and like leading that strategy of like a
Mhm.
startup or tech company that's
Mhm.
rapidly growing in a really cool
Mhm.
space. Um,
Mhm.
with all that, like, where's the puck going? What's exciting about the future? What's your kind of prediction about
Oh,
all this?
yeah. It is, I think, I I was thinking about that honestly, Marco, because
Hmm.
I spend some time on LinkedIn, and I know that it's also a scary time
Hmm.
for folks in L&D. But I am going to, on record, say that I don't think L&D is going anywhere in terms of AI. I think we will become some of the best partners. When I am thinking through things, I will pull up an agent and say, I'm thinking this. What do you think? How does this feel? But I still have the ultimate say over it. So it's really like having the best assistant. I see it. I see learning teams really getting stronger in that space because we will have to shift to helping people think critically. One thing, and I know we all know this, AI makes mistakes, but it also is your biggest cheerleader. So you don't always get the right feedback. And so that's where that critical thinking comes in. As AI continues to grow and expand and be utilized, we will actually, I think L&D will be on the forefront of helping people build the skills to actually work in partnership with AI, as opposed to having to do some of the things today. I love the fact that I can go to AI and say, here's all my references, put them in APA format, and I don't have to do that. But I still have to check it and make sure that it's doing right. And I think that's where we'll be spending our time. That's how I'm supporting my students. We utilize AI as we're thinking through things in the classroom as it relates to learning and development, but we're still the agents of that. And I see their critical thinking building higher.
Got it. So embracing AI, not being fearful of that, having it
Mhm.
as your sidekick and using it as a tool to enable you to, be more productive,
Mhm.
creative, effective,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And human in the loop always, like that's what I'm
Mhm.
hearing. Like it's
Yeah.
not about AI doing stuff, it's about the AI helping us get stuff
Yeah.
done. So I like that kind of like mindset as well.
Mhm.
Um, so what I get out of this conversation, you really kind of designed your perfect career. You kind of created uh, where you want to go, and you just unapologetically just went there. And
Yes.
it's really powerful. It's inspiring
Thank you.
to see.
Thank
If
you.
you kind of imagine going back in time, younger self,
Mhm.
what would be a piece of advice you would give to you back then, starting your career, or
Yeah.
people starting their careers nowadays?
Yeah, I would honestly have told myself to trust my instincts.
Hmm.
Because to your point, that's what I did, but it was scary a lot of times, to trust those instincts, like to decide to go back to school and invest in a PhD in learning where that wasn't really a thing, right? They didn't even know where to put our college. That I really had to trust my instincts. So I would say to my younger self, just do that. And to anyone who's starting today, have the curiosity and don't be afraid. If I had never noticed that pattern and opened up my mouth and went to my supervisors to say, I think we can help them get better, I likely wouldn't have the career that I have today. So don't be afraid to use your voice and do those things. When you see something, say something, come up with your plan and make sure that it's solid and that it is rooted in like the curiosity, but also in the things that you want to achieve.
So curiosity and courage. That's what I heard.
I love it.
Very cool.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you, Tekeisha. It's been awesome to have you. Super inspiring
Thank
conversation.
you, Marco.
I really appreciate it. And
Thank you. It's been
we'll be
wonderful.
watching your career.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you to anyone who is out there listening.
Have a good one.